Breaking news, World War III flash update. Normalcy Norman, are you listening now? I've been warning people since January that they're going to start a war with Iran before the election, and here we go. We're right on schedule. Now, what happened today was that hundreds of ballistic missiles rained down on Israel, and a lot of them weren't intercepted. Unlike the attack that happened in April, this was all ballistic missiles traveling at hypersonic speeds. And while Israel does have the capability to take down these missiles with their aero defense system, they don't simply have enough interceptors for a massive volley like this. This is what overwhelm looks like. What differentiates this attack primarily is that in the first attack in April by Iran against Israel, in response for the killing of their generals at the consulate in Syria, that attack was preceded by a massive swarm of drones, hundreds of drones, which essentially telegraphed to the Israelis for hours on end that an attack was incoming. And then, of course, they coordinated those strikes by the drones with the ballistic missiles. So when the drones were almost there, they launched the ballistic missiles that travel at much faster speeds and they can reach their targets within 15 minutes. And so that is why you didn't see a lot of hits that time, but you did still see a lot of hits. And it was also so widely telegraphed for days on end. The Iranians, I think, specified exactly where their targets were going to be to the U.S., and all of the allies were on board. The U.S. had an aircraft carrier in the region at the time. So in this case, Israel was essentially by itself. It was playing on easy mode in Lebanon and Gaza Strip for a long time, and I think they let those victories go to their heads, and they forgot that the Iron Dome up against ballistic missiles becomes the paper dome, because this thing didn't intercept shit. These missiles completely annihilated several air bases. By the looks of things, we'll never know because Israel will never admit the extent of the damage. They're never going to show you the damage on military targets. You'll never see that. You notice that? You never see when missiles and drone strikes, whether it's Russia or Ukraine or Israel or anybody else, they never show you. They only show you when it hits civilians. So you can bet that the destruction caused here was significant. We are talking about numerous air bases, and these were all military targets by the looks of things. These weren't just indiscriminate. Iran has very precise cruise missile and ballistic missile systems, and they're very good at hitting their targets. Now, we can surmise that they likely hit numerous air bases, and on those air bases, there are very expensive planes. So there is a possibility that Israel lost some of its planes. We're talking about F-35s, F-15s, expensive pieces of equipment that are hard to replace, even though the U.S. has quite a few of them that they can spare, I'm sure. Nonetheless, this is just a reminder of the capabilities of fighting a near-peer adversary. In addition to that, we have a strike on a gas facility. I believe it was an offshore gas rig that went up in flames. We have and this is perhaps most important, and this one is somewhat hearsay, but it appears as though there was some activity around the Dimona nuclear research facility. So if that was true, and Iran was, or somebody within the mix, because this wasn't just an attack with Iran, this was a coordinated attack by the Axis of Resistance. This is what people have been anticipating for a long time. This was a true demonstration of capability, and I would argue that it's not a full demonstration of capability because they can launch a lot more than this simultaneously, and they don't have to telegraph it at all. The fact that they still telegraph this means that they were somewhat trying to keep this at a horizontal escalatory level so things don't get out of hand, but it will. This is going to get out of hand. We don't know the extent of the damage yet, but there are already calls for retaliation. The Warhawks are salivating right now. Understand what this is. This is the beginning of the war with Iran and Israel. Just repeat after me. This is the beginning of the war with Iran and Israel. So many times the normalcy bias sinks in immediately after something like this happens and people think, okay, it's over now. Do you seriously think that Israel is going to let this slide? They cannot let this slide. They have to respond in some way. Now, it could just be in the form of more high-level assassinations, but then you're just going to see more attacks by Iran on their infrastructure to the point where they're forced to respond. So what I think they're going to do, they're going to go all the way this time. They are going to attempt to target Iran's nuclear facilities. Now, we know, and I'm talking about their underground nuclear facilities. Last night, the Kremlin, Vladimir Putin was rushed to the Kremlin for an emergency meeting. Everybody was wondering why. Was it with respect to Lebanon? Was it respect to stuff that was going on with the close brushings with NATO warplanes in Alaska, or the stuff that's happening in the nuclear doctrine on the Ukrainian front? I think now we know what it was all about. Iran was getting to strike. They were getting ready to do a massive strike. Israel's incursion into Lebanon must have triggered something. It must have been a tripwire for something. Now we know that the Ayatollah is still in charge, despite some concerns that the president of Iran was actually kowtowing to the West and attempting to be overly appeasing to the interests of the West in an attempt to de-escalate the situation. By many people's accounts within that country, they were unsatisfied with the Iranian response to allowing Hezbollah to be essentially pummeled and to have their entire upper echelon decapitated. So my friends, this is it. As a preparedness warning, we need to advise you at this point in time, if there's things that you want to get them now, because the supply chain, never mind the strikes on the East Coast, we are talking about a big slowdown in the global supply chain if you start to see something flare up in the Middle East. It's going to affect international shipping lanes. It's going to affect the price of oil, obviously, because the next step after Israel retaliating against Iran is going to be Iran retaliating against their assets within the region, and that could include American assets. Inevitably, this will spill over and it will cease to be a proxy conflict because the Americans are fully committed to getting involved. There is no NATO Article 5 in this situation. The real question is what sort of capabilities has the Russians bestowed upon the Iranians in order to have emboldened them to do such a move? Is it possible that the Russians have provided the Iranians with advanced missile defense capabilities or air defense capabilities in order to protect them from the West's superior aviational capability, which you know is going to be coming at any moment now? There were rumors back in April after the response that there was an F-35 armed with a nuclear weapon that had in its sights the Iranian nuclear program. At this point in time, I would not put anything past Netanyahu, who is so conditioned to act with impunity no matter what he does, that now he has a green light. He's loving this right now because, for one, there's not a lot of civilian casualties, but it is now providing more justification for his case to go to war with Iran. And Lindsey Graham is having a massive erection right now over all of this. He is getting ready to go all in terms of trying to pass whatever bill it needs to be passed. I think they've all been passed already, in fact, to ensure that the United States military-industrial complex is going to get a piece of this next pie that is being served in the Middle East right now. It's going to get ugly. This is it. This is the beginning. Israel is going to respond. Iran has already claimed that when they do that, they will respond. And this is not like April. This is much different. This has not been telegraphed like that first attack. It's very important to differentiate what's happening now between then. This was actually a successful attack because Iran is using its more advanced weaponry. They did not give the Americans and the Israelis forewarning, although it appears as though they may have given the Russians forewarning, because that's the only way the Kremlin would have been having that emergency meeting last night. So Vladimir Putin knew this was coming. There are rumors that he attempted to contact Benjamin Netanyahu today, but there was no documented contact. So, sorry, actually, let me get that switched around. It was Netanyahu attempted to contact Vladimir Putin about this, but Putin supposedly didn't answer the phone. Now, I don't know if that is true, but that would be a smart move. That would be the strategically ambiguous play in order to continue to have diplomatic relations with both sides of the fence and not burn any bridges. You just simply don't get involved, right? But you provide Iran with the means to defend itself. You still have your operations ongoing in Syria, which you haven't intervened with Israeli operations. There's a clearly demarcated red line there that's been respected for years, if not decades. So, but I think these lines can start to become very blurry very soon when the shooting starts with Israel and Iran. And Russia is loving this right now too, because it takes attention away from what is going on there. And today, they allegedly have now laid their flags down in Ugledar. So they've successfully pushed out the Ukrainians from a very positive stronghold, which is no longer in their capture. And so now they have to readjust their logistics lines, and it's going to be a rocky road from this point forward. So you're likely to see Ukraine do some moves right now to get themselves back into the news cycle and back into people's minds. But we're going to do another update later on today to assess the extent of the damage and fine-tune our analysis as to what's going to be coming next. But I can guarantee without a doubt, there is no doubt in my mind, Israel is going to respond this time. It's going to be big, and it is going to prompt yet another retaliation, because if you take out Iran's nuclear program in the way that you tried to do with Nasrallah, or if you start assassinating high-ranking officials inside Iran, it's over, man. It is over. That Strait of Hormuz gets closed. You start to see U.S. aircraft carriers get sunk. They're going to drop nukes on Iran. And I don't think Russia is going to sit idly by, and I don't think China is going to sit idly by while that happens. They're not. This is going to get big. So this has the potential to get full blown. So I would encourage you to gear up before the panic starts. Do what you got to do. Get your shit together, because any day now, this thing could just spiral way out of control. We're talking about cyber attacks. If you don't think that this is going to reach us, it's going to reach us. In fact, I think that Verizon thing yesterday, I don't know what that was, or just look at all the massive, zero-day events that have happened already this year. That's what we're going to see in the run up to this. So just be aware, be prepared, and I'll update you guys in a few hours. Thanks for watching.